Hello, people. I am Jyotsna, and you are listening to my podcast, Just Being Jyotsna. So, this is the fourth episode of my podcast, and I hope you're all doing well. I'm going to be speaking about something that's really close to my heart, and the theme is about being a South Indian in North India. And if this were a video, you would be seeing that I was doing air quotes while I did South Indian, while I said South Indian. So, before I start, I would like to tell you that whatever I say it with love because having been a Tamilian who lived in the NCR for like almost full all of the 18 years of her life, I identify almost equally with both parts of the country. And I'll try really hard not to generalize, but if I do, I'm really sorry about it. So, yes, firstly, I realized that the terms South Indian and North Indian have started sounding really funny to me because of their uncanny similarity to the words South Korean and North Korean. But come on, Koreans only hold nuclear weapons against each other. We hold stereotypes. We are obviously the more powerful entities. So, being a South Indian in North India, I was either amused, entertained, or offended almost continuously. It was mostly the third option that was offended until a life-changing incident happened. Yes. So it was the 10th grade. It was a social science class. Our teacher was talking about the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi and the LTTE, which was a Sri Lankan Tamil extremist group. And did not matter that they were Sri Lankan. Someone heard the word Tamil, and a guy from the back of the class yelled at me that your people killed our prime minister. And I clearly remember that was the first time I was not offended, but really amused. Well, that guy almost called me a terrorist, but it is funny how I was not as offended by that as when someone called me a madrasan. I get it. It's technically wrong, but I don't know why it sounded offensive. And whenever someone used to call me a madrasan, I understand people from a state other than Tamil Nadu being offended because that's really wrong. But me having some connection to Madras was still really offended about it. And I'd go, Tamilian, it is Tamilian. I guess that's what the British did to us. English supremacy and all. So, yeah. And it was also always fun when someone asked me if I was a vegetarian or if I ate meat, because I would say, no, I don't eat meat because I am a vegetarian. And then the person would always have a follow-up question, which would be, but you do eat fish, right? And then I'd answer saying that, no, I don't eat fish. It counts as meat. And I said I'm vegetarian. And then they'd be shocked because you're a South Indian, right? That's the coast. How can you not eat fish? After a half an hour long explanation that I would give, through most of which most of the people would sleep, I would end by saying that we also don't live on boats. And trust me, a lot of people were also shocked by not living on the boat thing. Yeah, as I said, I'll not generalize. And yes, classes were always fun. because I remember I have another incident in mind, which is a certain English class, and we were reading a story which was based in South India, like Karnataka specifically. But even though I'm from Tamil Nadu, I was the only South Indian in class, so I was kind of representing every state south of Maharashtra. And the teacher, before starting the lesson, asked if there was any South Indian in class. I raised my hand, and then he very coolly asked if I mind if he made jokes. And I said it would depend on what kind of jokes they were. I thought it was a pretty basic answer, but apparently it was not that basic. Moving on. So the lesson began, and a portion in the story mentioned that there was an 11-year-old girl who wore a sari because it was a Friday, who wore a grand sari because it was a Friday. And I clearly remember all about 35 heads in the class slowly turning towards me, and I could read their minds, imagining that I wore a sari every Friday. I then slyly mentioned that the story was also based in like the 19th century, which is 2 centuries ago. That didn't matter because what was imagined, it was done. So, yes. On that note, I also tried telling a lot of people that Lungi dance is not our state anthem, and that also came as a shock. To be fair, all the stereotypes are based in some reality, right? And all the stereotypes for any person who speaks Hindi about South India comes from a serial called Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma, which, trust me, almost all of us are guilty of watching. So yes, there is a character called Ayyar Bhai, and to give a brief about him to who haven't watched the show, his introduction tune goes something like this. And the guy does Bharatanatyam on every occasion. Yeah, there's a lot. I will not get into it. There was one little factor, which was that he is a character written by a Gujarati, played by a guy from Maharashtra. But I mean, I accept it. Must be accurate. Why wouldn't it be accurate? Me choosing this theme for this episode seems to be pretty appropriate because I'm recording this episode in Trichy. And I took a road trip to here from Bangalore. So on the way here, on the side of the road, I saw a bunch of, worn out old doors lying around. And that really inspired me to write something so I'd like to read it out to y'all. Sitting by a moving window, passing by faces and objects and tales, my mind was held back by a stack of doors, worn out, ripped off and pale. A pile of bricks lay by their side, yelling out something. To listen, I tried. There wasn't much time before I passed by, but I wondered what it was that was shattered. Was it a prosperous occasion? Someone rebuilding a worn-out home? Or was it something less prosperous? Was someone's childhood home that bore a banner saying sold, bolted down for something more prosperous, for not them, but for someone else? I wondered if the ripped off doors were bringing joy to a little child, or was someone's childhood longing just to have another glance before the doors of their childhood turned to dust. So that was it. That brings me to the end of this episode. And if you like listening to my podcast, you can subscribe to it on YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Thank you. Bye-bye.